power goes down, that's also my internet.
Good afternoon. You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. Click the live stream tab or watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I'm Celeste Giordano, your show host, along with my co-host, Sherita, and we are the Global Legacy and Wealth Building for the next hour. We're the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, our disclaimer: the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guests and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. And I would like to start off with Happy New Year to you, Sherita, and our guests, Brooke and Shanita. This should be interesting today. We got two Sheritas and a Shanita. So hopefully y'all can cipher between the two. But Happy New Year to each of you, and so glad to have you on the show today. I'm so glad, Sherita, to have you as my co-host this year for our second season. And Brooke, it's been a while since we've seen you. We've been associated with Street Grace and you for at least 5 years, and it's glad to have you back here in Atlanta. You were in Los Angeles, so we're so glad to have you. And it's wonderful, Shanita, to meet you and to have you on the show with us tonight. But most importantly, we want to thank WCEG Network. It's Penny Rogers, the CEO and founder, as well as the board members. We are grateful for the opportunity to come to you live via Zoom for WCEG Network. And so, Sherita, to start off, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and our listeners. Tell them a little bit about you. I think I forgot to mention your last name, but if you would just share a little bit about you and what you do with our awesome listeners.
Hi, I'm Sherita Herring, and my organization is the Philanthropy Alliance Foundation. And what I do is I help develop nonprofits, coach nonprofit professionals, but also small business owners and entrepreneurs. For the last 30 years, that's what I have done, in addition to helping to raise over $30 million, developing over 600 organizations operating globally, and that's including in more than 14 countries. So Celeste, I always look forward to joining you. It's an honor that you consider me for your fantastic radio broadcast, and I'm just glad to be here.
Absolutely. And Happy New Year. You know, Sherita, I always remember the very first time that I met you. It was at an opportunity that we went to a summit for a week, and we were out helping children and different organizations and doing philanthropy work. And just it's been such a wonderful ride over the years, how we have learned to collaborate, build our relationships. You've been a part of Women of Community Impact. You've crafted some programs for us that we've had some of our listeners and members be a part of. And I just can't thank you enough for being an ambassador to Women of Community Impact, being my show co-host with Global Legacy and Wealth Building, our nonprofit series. You are the queen of grant writing, and we just love and adore you and look forward to many, many more shows with you. So thank you.
Thank you. But was that in the Yucatan, or were we in Jamaica? The first.
Well, we went to the Yucatan, then we went to Jamaica.
Yeah.
And so we've done a lot of philanthropy work together and served. And, you know, a matter of fact, I was at Kiwanis Club today giving a talk about building a legacy business through servant leadership. And look forward to us having a long talk about that real soon.
Great.
So, Brooke, I'm going to start with you. And Brooke, I would love for you to introduce yourself, even though I know you through Street Grace, and we are excited to have Street Grace on the show. I think this is probably our third or fourth year that we've interviewed Street Grace. Women of Community Impact is, Street Grace is very near and dear to our hearts. We've promoted you for Human Trafficking Month. In January, we've been to your lobby days, we've been to your galas, and we love and adore Street Grace and everything you're doing to protect our society and our communities throughout the United States against sex trafficking. So without further ado, Brooke, would you do the honors of introducing yourself and what you're doing with Street Grace? And then I'm going to have you introduce Shanita.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to see you all and be on with you this afternoon. My name is Brooke Ruffin. I'm the Director of Outreach and Engagement at Street Grace. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to eradicating the commercial sexual exploitation of children. We are a demand-centric organization, and we have national programming with physical offices in Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, Texas, and Chattanooga. So we're thrilled to be here. We believe that everybody has a role in the fight against the sexual exploitation of our youth, and that it's our role in our society to step up and be the voice for the most vulnerable in our society, and make sure that we are harshening the punishments for the traffickers and buyers that are seeking to exploit their innocence. So we'll get into a bit of our programming a bit later, but I'm so happy to have my wonderful colleague, Shanita Hart here. She's our program lead on Transaction Intercept and Youth Leadership Academy. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Shanita.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Brooke. Like Brooke said, I am the program lead for Transaction Intercept and Youth Leadership Academy. I've been with Street Grace for about almost 2.5 years. This fight means a lot to me. I think it's important that the vulnerable has somebody to speak for them, to fight for them, because they are not able to. And so I'm just excited to be here and glad to be a part of this fight.
Well, great. Sherita, this is going to be interesting. If I call on you, Shanita, then I got to go to Sherita. It is such an honor and privilege for Sherita and I to have you on the show today and interview. And I'm really ready to jump right in, Sherita. So I'm going to start off with the first question for Brooke and for Shanita, so we can have a conversation about all the questions that we're going to talk about. So Brooke, how is Street Grace unique in the anti-trafficking space?
Yes, I think we are all familiar with the term human trafficking. It can kind of be a red button topic, if you will, especially during the month of January. How Street Grace is unique is that we are demand centric, while offering some direct services and those primary care providers and things of that nature. We're more on stopping the problem before it happens, because it truly is a cycle of abuse. If you are raised within the life of exploitation, you're more likely to exploit others. It may be the only way that you have been taught to make money. And of course, how sex is first introduced into one's life will play a primary role in how they perpetuate those habits. So as a demand-centric organization, we go after the buyer population to figure out what is leading a person to want to purchase the abuse of a child. Nobody wakes up on a Tuesday wanting to hurt a child. So really figuring out what makes a buyer, how can we get ahead of the game with prevention efforts. So as a child-centric organization, we're in the school systems, within congregations and community groups, arming them with the knowledge they need to prevent future exploitation within their communities.
Before we go further, for someone that is listening, and I know, Celeste, you and I have some questions that we wanted to ask, but for someone that doesn't hear about child trafficking every day, they might think of a pedophile, and maybe there's someone that they think of that one individual, but you probably have some numbers that can give people the reality of what really is happening with the exploitation of our children and trafficking. Can you give someone that just doesn't see the seriousness of it? Can you kind of give them that?
Yes. And really, it's honestly changed even since I came into the fight 5 years ago. It's moved predominantly online. I think we all have the false notion of security of thinking that it's a their problem or an overseas problem, potentially a problem for those being brought into the country to be exploited. which has us missing the exploitation that's happening right under our noses, which is our own children are being trafficked after they attend school each day. So I think it definitely looks different and is more predominantly integrated within our society, much more domesticated than we like to believe. For instance, the pandemic, we saw a large increase in online exploitation because people were at home and out of work. People were more financially stressed and more willing to exploit the youth in their life. The youth were more unsupervised online. They were spending more time online. So just from all facets of the problem, and I believe it's there was a 97.5% increase in the online solicitation of youth during the pandemic. And that was just from 2019 to 2020. So online enticement and solicitation. And that can mean, it can have several different faces. It's going to happen, of course, on social media. And we even see social media where the trafficker is kind of removed, where the content creator is being connected directly with the consumer on things like OnlyFans. Another misconception is that this is an inner city problem and a low income problem, when predominantly this is happening in households that have that access to technology. So a child that has their own tablet, laptop, phone, game system is going to be more at risk than the child who is sharing the computer with the entire family in the living room, and is offline at 3 a.m. because they know that they would be supervised if they were. So there are a lot of misconceptions and myths. I always say we cannot take all of our life lessons from Liam Neeson. We've all watched the movie Taken. So kind of taking a step back from the Hollywood depiction of what human trafficking looks like and what it's actually looking like from a buyer to arrange a meeting on his way home from Best Buy, and taking it away from the kidnapping stereotype that we don't see very much anymore.
The fact that you can even say buyer when it comes to exploiting our children is scary.
And you know, one thing, Sherita, that really caught me by surprise when the first time that Bob came and spoke about street grace and the things that they're doing. So here in Atlanta, a majority of that, Brooke, is coming outside of 285. As you said, it's not the inner city, it's outside. And it's really the above average and the wealthier people that are doing this to these children.
Right. You have to have that disposable income to be able to hide purchases from your family. And if every dollar is tracked in that budget, you're going to have a lot less freedom to make those purchases and to make those kind of gut reaction decisions that buyer traffickers can tend to make.
So that goes to the question I was going to ask, like, what does a trafficker look like?
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer. I wish I could say, but it's all socioeconomic levels, all races and ages, because people come to be buyers for different reasons. I think we all, like you said, have kind of our stereotype of what a pedophile looks like. And there's this wonderful photo of an arrest made at the Houston Super Bowl years ago. And it was all gentlemen that were arrested in either buying or trafficking a minor. And it's all ages, all races. So unfortunately, you have the person who has developed a severe addiction, and their only next step is to actually go through with the purchase of a human being. So maybe they've, had a severe pornography addiction that has led them to need to purchase another person. And maybe you have somebody who's been abused since they were 7. So in their mind, a sexual relationship is actually an abusive relationship. So they are much younger. And they're able to see sex buying as one of the first options when it comes to their sexual habits.
Right. So I would like to ask another question. How has trafficking groom changed in recent years?
I would say the pace. I'll let Shanita jump in just after this, but used to be that a trafficker would have to build a rapport with a student or with a youth kind of over 4 to 6 months, even if that were online. And they would have to build that trust with that person and become the confidant and the go-to for that child's life. But now, because of social media and because of the social norms of how relationships work among our teens, it's happening at a much faster pace. So things that we would have seen happen after 4 to 6 months of communication can happen within 18 hours. And with sextortion being so prevalent, which is blackmail with sexual digital material, it's an abuse that's non-physical in nature, but we see a lot of this happening because of the prevalence of sexting within our youth population. And so if that picture gets into the wrong hands, okay, well, now you have to send me a video, or I'm going to post this, I'm going to share it with this team, with your parents. And that sextortion coming into play can really escalate situations within a matter of minutes and within 5 clicks, rather than going through the steps of, being at the same library after school as the student, going to the same coffee shops, that slow relationship building that we used to see before it was predominantly online.
Yeah, so I have to second what Brooke just said. Because of social media, it escalates quickly. The youth are very familiar with social media. It's easy to make friends. During my teachings with Youth Leadership Academy, when I asked the students, how many of you have met people online that does not go to your school, the amount of hands that go up. And when I asked them, are you sure that this is the person that they say that they are? They just say, well, yes, they say that they are, right? And so it's easy for them to just believe something. You tell them a few things and they will believe these facts because this is normalized. Being on social media and dating, you have dating apps as a normal thing. As to Brooke and I's generation, we're more cautious because it was not normalized when we were growing up until we became adults. And it's like, oh, that this is a normal thing to meet people on social media, and you just believe that they're this person. And you have the younger generation is like, well, yeah, people go to different schools, they live in different areas. So, oh, they are following the same friends. Oh, I saw them at a football game one time, so I know that they're my age. These things it's a normalized thing, unfortunately, and they're not really taught to be cautious. And so that's where us as Street Grace with Youth Leadership Academy, we come in and we're teaching them how to be cautious, what to look out for, what questions to ask. It's not okay to just be like, you say who you are, so I'm just going to go hang out with you. Be a little bit more timid. Don't go somewhere by yourself. Go with a group of friends. And the look on their faces, they're like, oh, like, okay, so this is what I need. These are the things I need to be doing, right? And so it's new information because they've been doing these things, and thankfully certain things haven't happened, but we need to teach them we want to prevent these things from happening. So this is what is going on. And we know we don't want to scare you, but we want you to be cautious, of your actions, your surroundings, the people that you're around, your friends, your boundaries, know these things so that they can help protect you. And so even with your first question on what makes us different, I think really getting in and teaching the youth these preventative actions to take.
Shanita, well, one thing I agree with you so hard on this is we have youth today, and we have, parents need to take responsibility for educating their children, and, the age that, how they're letting them on social media, and they're letting them take their phones to bed at night instead of leaving them in the kitchen or whatever. And these kids are online all night long chatting this or that. And, it's just educating them. And I think that there's just so much trust. They think, oh, it will never happen to me. My child's very smart. My child knows better. And that's not the case.
Right.
A moment ago, I think, Brooke, I think you mentioned something about the Super Bowl. And with another client, is it true that one of the largest trafficking events in the US is the Super Bowl?
Yes, that's a very common I guess note that's passed around. And while there is a lot of trafficking that occurs at a Super Bowl, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a sporting event. There are factors around it that, yes, everybody attending the Super Bowl has disposable income because they were able to afford a very expensive ticket.
Mm.
Chances are you're not coming into town with your whole family. So you're probably coming into town. It's a predominantly male event that are without their families. So for instance, when we held the Super Bowl in Atlanta, it was the influx of people coming to the city. It wasn't that the Super Bowl itself was a huge trafficking event. It was that it brought thousands, tens of thousands of people to the city. And all of those people were coming with disposable income. So it's less about the subject matter of the event and that it's bringing in a bunch of people with disposable income.
Okay. Wow. So some of your programs that you are implementing, with your programs, with someone listening today, like I wanted to add, what kind of programs do you have coming up? And then how will, like if it's a young girl that feels like maybe she's getting caught up in trafficking, but didn't want to tell her mom, do you have that kind of opportunity for her to?
Yes. So all of our initiatives are streamlined through 4 pillars, I think would be the easiest kind of way to give a framework of how we attack this issue. So our first pillar being prevention, which is our youth education, parent education through Keeping Kids Safe in the Digital Age, which is a program on how to have those really difficult conversations that we're asking you to have. Because we, like Shanita said, we didn't grow up with this risk. So a lot of parents feel unprepared to even broach the subject of what their children are facing online. And then protection, which is where we have a 24-hour hotline. It's a wonderful resource for anybody to reach out. It's 1-833-FREE-2B. So I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat as we move on. But so we offer direct care services with licensed care providers and kind of guide a confirmed youth. So somebody who we received through the hotline and we've confirmed that they are being victimized by the commercial sexual exploitation of children. And we guide them through that healing journey. And then policy is where we develop legislation that both harshens the punishments for traffickers and buyers, but it also aids survivors' successful reentry into society. A lot of times survivors will have things on their records that were committed while under force, fraud, or coercion. So getting those things removed from their records allows them to do simple things like get a good job, get an apartment. And if you're not able to secure other employment, you're much more likely to recidivate, which is to go back into the life, because that's how you know how to support, the children that you have and how to support yourself, how to keep yourself off the streets. Mm-hmm. And then our final pillar being pursuit, which is pursuit of the buyer. And we have transaction intercept, which I'll let Shanita go ahead and get into since she's more intricately involved.
Yes, so transaction intercept. So this initiative we have is we're going and we have an artificial intelligence chatbot named Gracie, and we're posting decoy ads on the sites that these buyers are on, that these traffickers are on, and intercepting them from trafficking another woman or child. With this, we know that, okay, if we're taking the attention away from, if they're talking to this bot, then they're not talking to this other, this other human being. So pretty much going in and just making sure that we are protecting whoever it is that they're trying to talk to. And so, I post the decoy ads, but I also see what's coming in. And so I'm seeing what's being said and I'm seeing the type of people. And like we talked about before, what does traffickers look like? they don't have a face. These are normal people, that you would not, oh my gosh, it's this creep. No, it's not that anymore. It's not the white van. It is a businessman. It is a dad. It is a mom. It is an uncle. It's an aunt. It's a friend. There's all these things. There's nothing that you can really say to be like, okay, this is how you pinpoint it, right? But just creating the cautions, the preventions to be like, okay, these are the signs that you need to look out for. These are the boundaries that you create for yourself. But yeah, so Transaction Intercept and our artificial intelligence chatbot is how we kind of do that pursuit on the buyers. And after each, we call them operations. The buyers are sent a message to be able to go on a site and for a redemption for help. So if you think you have if you're addicted to sex or porn, they're able to click a link and find some help pretty much. So we do believe in redemption.
Yes, and those resources are available in connecting them to counseling services and things like that, so that they can take that first step in their healing. We also let them know the ramifications of their actions. So it's a wonderful scare tactic. There was a stat years ago, it's probably too old to publish at this point, but it was that a first-time buyer will call 7 to 9 times before actually going through with the purchase of a minor. So of course you're hoping to scare away one of those first-time buyers, but also there's nothing they can do. That number will always be registered to them at that point in time. So this information is available to law enforcement. And this past year, we were so excited to be able to expand our platform so that law enforcement can be utilizing this technology. They're able to log in, see the conversations that Gracie's having, click into one of them and join that conversation. So we have that needed human in the loop for prosecution. They can set a location and actually make that arrest. So it's wonderful to see something that a smaller nonprofit created to gather buyer demographics and aid future prevention efforts take on a life of its own, and have this separate platform for law enforcement to both reduce the cost and the time that it takes for them to make these arrests.
Absolutely. Sherita, before you ask the next question, I'd just like to, for our listeners and audience out there, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. Put them in there. We'll be glad to answer any of your questions that you may have. So make sure that you do that. So Sherita, do you have some questions for him, please?
I do. I was wondering, excuse me. I was wondering, as far as the technology, redeeming technology, and I think that you kind of touched on it earlier. How are you redeeming technology?
Yes, that is through the Transaction Intercept program. And with technology being the largest factor in the increase of exploitation that we're seeing, and it's kind of become the biggest thing that we're fighting is that it constantly changes what trafficking is looking like, right? So our efforts to fight against it have to continuously adapt as well. So when looking at technology as something that is making this problem severely worse, figuring out how we can kind of fight fire with fire and utilize this AI technology to maximize our anti-demand efforts is going to be essential with moving forward, because this is the fastest growing criminal industry today. And so that means that we're going to have to, of course, maximize efforts against it so that we're growing the fight against this type of activity as well.
Okay. How long have you ladies worked together?
A little over 2 years now. I actually started as a volunteer at Street Grace about 6 years ago, and then came on staff about 5 years ago. And Shanita's been with us for a little over 2.
Yes. Okay.
So what are traffickers looking for?
They are, if we're talking about online, They are looking for vulnerable youth. So they are looking for that person that is in need of comfort, in need of a confidant, like we said. So as far as social posts go, they're looking for somebody who maybe is being bullied online and needs that defender. Maybe they're looking for somebody who's complaining about their parents. If they're online and they're complaining about being grounded, that presents the trafficker a wonderful opportunity to come in and say, oh, your parents just don't understand how mature you are. I wish I could come and take you out, and encourage them to sneak out. And once they ostracize them from the people in their lives and become that only person, that manipulation is made so much easier. So they're looking for a vulnerable person who is potentially lonely, somebody who's already posting photos that hint that they need some extra attention. If they're already posting bikini photos, you going in and requesting more risque photos is going to be closer than somebody who has not already shared those photos. So already showing a certain promiscuity within their online profile is going to be something that sticks out to a trafficker and speaks to their level of vulnerability to that type of exploitation. Because as easy as a decision as it may seem to all of us on here to say no to this type of exploitation, a 14-year-old young girl who's never been told that she's beautiful, who has been abused by her stepfather, when somebody comes in and starts giving her gifts and all of these lavish compliments and love bombing her and telling her, oh, I can get you out of that abusive situation if you can just help pay half the rent by doing this. It seems like a step up. Unfortunately, their realm of reality is completely different than ours. And so what may seem as a horrific circumstance to us may be a step up, because at least they have a safe place to stay. They know that they're going to be fed. And maybe they're not being physically harmed in the new situation.
Sherita, I have a question here, because you were asking statistics. Brooke or Shanita, do you have any statistics on where these vulnerable children, do they come from homes with both parents or single family?
As far as a specific statistic, I do not. I know that a broken home is going to put somebody at high risk, specifically those without a father figure in the home. Because that's going to have less oversight of the child and more often leads to more financial needs of the household as well. So unfortunately, we do see a lot of familial sex trafficking. And so whether that's to support a parent's addiction, or if it's just how that family is operated for generations. We know of a family who was dropping their 14-year-old off at the car dealership once a month to pay their minivan bill. So a lot of times it doesn't have a big wad of cash involved. People are being trafficked as a transaction. And it doesn't always have to have a payment. It could just be the promise of payment. So a lot of times we have this idea of the big wad of cash and what trafficking looks like, when in actuality, it's much more domesticated, much more transactional.
Huh. When you were talking about those that may be taking those promiscuous pictures and having them, still for someone that may be trafficked, you have to know that it still wasn't their fault that they ended up being trafficked. Because I know that times when I've dealt with young girls, as far as with programs, when I've dealt with clients, and when they were even molested by a family member or whatever, they kept wanting to blame themselves. And
Right.
And so, it's just important for them to understand that that is not their fault. And I know that you guys are, now, do you have counselors also that you work with to help someone through some of the process, some of the things that they have gone through?
Yes, and there is a stat of those that have been previously sexually abused who are then trafficked. And I believe I want to say it's 74% of the population that was polled at that time,
Mhm.
history of previous sexual abuse. And because the fact is, if you're 5 and you're abused and you're told that your body's not your own and that adults can do with it what they will, when somebody brings in those lavish gifts, it kind of seems like a step up. So that's why really putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and figuring out what is acceptable in their realm of reality can be kind of difficult. And that's how we can place judgments. That's how terms like teen prostitute and child prostitute come around, when we don't even allow our children to drive a car without an adult present until they're 16. How can we expect them to choose a career and to choose to be able to enter a contract that sells their physical body? So I think a lot of times people want child sexual exploitation and trafficking to be the small child behind bars that is begging for help, right? They don't think about that this may be the teen that has been in and out of juvie with tattoos that is using some rude language to you. So really taking a step back, and what does a trafficked individual look like? And what education does that trafficked individual have about their own situation? So many times they refuse to admit their victimization because they see their own decisions that led them there, but they don't understand that they made that first decision and they were manipulated from that point on. So they don't know how to clarify when it stopped becoming their choice.
I have a question from the audience there, and it says, are there safe places for someone being trafficked? How would they recognize it's a safe place?
Yes, there are designated hotline flyers within, you'll find them in gas stations, especially at rest stops. There's an entire campaign for bus drivers against sex trafficking. So if you are able to give that hotline a call, they will be able to connect you with local services in your area. Of course, if they're ever in physical danger and or immediate danger, call 911, because cops have been trained on how to use a victim-centered approach from the very beginning and how to have that trauma-informed response. I think there's an oversimplification and kind of an antiquated belief that law enforcement will still approach the situation and charge the person being trafficked with prostitution. And that's what traffickers want us to think. They want you to be fearful of authority figures. They don't want you to feel comfortable reaching out to law enforcement with matters like this.
Well, and one of the audiences says, is there a sign visible, or if they can't, call 911? I just recently I travel back and forth from Kentucky to Georgia, and I go over I-40 between Waynesville and Knoxville, and there's a rest area there. And a lot of the rest stops have those signs on the back of the stall in the bathroom, and it has some information. And I was sitting here thinking, it's like, how can this person call? They probably don't have a phone on them. There's nothing to write anything down. I don't know if they're able, if they take anything in there, but I was thinking, what do you do? Because I'm sure if you're being trafficked, they don't let you're not taking a purse, or you're not taking anything with you, go to the bathroom. They don't want you to have any of that stuff, right?
That makes sense.
That speaks to how essential community education is. And although you would never say that an exploited person is, the voiceless, and there was this have a voice for the voiceless, we would never say that about the people that are being exploited. But what we can say is that they have a lack of access to communication with the outside world. So it's on us to be able to recognize the red flags of exploitation. And it's on us to have that hotline saved in our phone so that we can call and say, hey, this is the license plate of a car. This is what I saw. I don't know if it's a case of trafficking, but I wanted you guys to know. They'll be able to take that, compare it with other reports that are being made. So I think that, again, people are very fearful to report, and they aren't realizing that the people behind these hotlines are waiting for your call. They're waiting to help out. They're not going to tell you to jump on a white horse and follow that car. they're going to collect all of the information that you have and then take the necessary steps after that. And if need be, contacting law enforcement.
So I guess those signs and the rest areas and stuff really are for people like each one of us, that maybe to make us aware if we see that, to be able to provide that information to us. And I never even thought about putting that into your phone. I mean, what a great idea. Everybody should have that in their phone. So if you see something, you don't have to wonder, what could I do or whatever. It's there that you could just speed dial it.
Exactly. And you're very nervous in a situation like that, so as much as you can do to prepare yourself ahead of time to have the tools necessary to be able to make a report, to potentially save somebody's life, is well worth it.
Well, and a lot of traveling, I do recall this going across there. I remember one time that I stopped at a rest area and there was a much older man and a very young girl. And, but, you just don't think about it, and I'm not saying that was a situation, but, and I'm sure, Shanita, that's where the education comes from, not only with the youth, but for the parents. And I know we have about 17 minutes left, is, how much education that as parents that we need to get about this. Did you lose me? Or I lost Brooke? No?
Cut out just at the end there.
Yeah, kind of cut out a little.
I'm sorry.
We're speaking of what parent education is needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's so much of how to phrase it. I think a lot of parents know that this is an issue, but they don't want to ruin that protective bubble that they've put around their babies. They don't want to be the first person to talk about pornography or sexting with their child. So I think, unfortunately, we're carrying a lot of shame that we were brought up with surrounding matters of pornography and sex, and that's inhibiting us from having these table conversations with our youth. So really removing the stigmas and wanting to be the person in your child's life that they have these difficult conversations with. I always tell my parents that we're training, if your child walks in and asks you a question and your face goes completely red, then you are doing the perfect thing. That's right where you need to be. They need to feel so comfortable coming to you that you feel completely awkward and you're able to just walk through that journey with them and just say, yeah, this is what we're dealing with. This is how we're going to have this conversation, and just be thankful that day they didn't go on and go to pornography to be more educated about sex. They didn't go to an older friend to ask them these questions. They felt comfortable enough because you've removed the notion of the talk and are having a series of awkward conversations that will kind of remove the stigma within your household.
Well, and that was one of the questions, is what programs do you have that people could participate in?
Yes. Shanita, I'll let you go ahead and get into Youth Leadership Academy.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so for the youth, we have Youth Leadership Academy, and this is for middle school, high school, even higher elementary, like 4th and 5th grade. And so going into whether it's schools, churches, organizations that have youth groups, it's a 7-week program. We provide student guides and volunteers that go through a training, our facilitators or myself. And this is just coming in and teaching the students and the kids leadership. So what is leadership? What does leadership look like? Do you believe that you're a leader? And also identity. Who are you? A lot of times when we identify ourselves, we say what we do, our name, we describe a physical feature, but who are you to the sense of what is your character? Are you a hard worker? Are you loyal? Knowing these things about yourself, you'll know yourself, right? And so if I know myself well enough, somebody can't come in and tell me you're selfish, and you're selfish because you don't do this, this, and that to make me feel bad or less than. Now I feel like I have to do whatever it is that they're telling me, right? or you just beat up on yourself because it's like, oh, maybe I am a mean person. But if you know that you're very kind-hearted and you don't have a mean bone in your body, then somebody cannot come in and say you're mean and it affects you and you try and change who you are. And so, and then we go into stewardship. Are you a good steward of your time, other people's time, of your feelings, of your physical self? We go into attitude. Do you have a good attitude? As a leader, do you think leaders should have good attitudes or bad attitudes? And can you name a leader that you saw or that that had a bad attitude and describe that? Why? Because then once they're describing this, that'll let me know if they really understand what that looks like. So it's really getting to know the youth. And you're sitting there and you're being personable with them and you're talking to them and seeing them light up because somebody is listening and somebody is having these hard conversations about sextortion, what is grooming, and these are things that at first the kids are like, oh my gosh, but then the reality of it is when I tell them stories about my life and what happened when I was in school and my classmates, they're like, what? You know about these things. And so it gains their trust because they know that I'm not just there because it's a job. They know that I'm there because I care and I'm relating to them. Right. And so even when we talk about who would you go to? Do you have a mentor? And they're like, oh no, I would not tell my parents this. I would not tell my friends this. And I asked them, well, do you trust your friends? Do you trust your parents? And they do open up and they will say no, because this, and this. And then the question for them, especially if it's your friends, okay, so are you around safe people? Do your friends influence you to do things that you don't want to do? And so giving them this knowledge about your friends, yourself, are you a safe person? Do you convince your friends to do things that they don't want to do? And they have to reflect on these things and really be real with themselves on, okay, that is not okay. If my friend says if they don't want to go to the party because they don't feel uncomfortable, should I say, oh my gosh, really, like you're being lame? No, you should not. If your friend does not feel comfortable, that is okay. And that is their feelings and they do not want to go, and so really having these, I love it because I get to have these conversations with them and they get to see that people care, and you're not just there just because you're there because you want to build that rapport with them, you want to inform them. And it's so great to hear what they say at the end, like, you're just so nice to us and you don't have to be. And I'm like, I appreciate you guys sitting here with me through these 7 weeks, and at the end they have a project on how it impacted them, on how they want to change their community, and they present it. And they're giving a certificate of completion from Youth Leadership Academy, which looks great on a resume, whether it's work or college. And you've gone through a leadership program and you've completed it and you are a leader. And the amount of kids that raise their hand at the end that believe that they're a leader now because they have this information and that they can make a change, or just seeing them helping their friends that have been in certain situations and they come and share that with me. It makes me so happy because it shows that they are listening, and so what we're teaching is really impacting the youth. And so I love Youth Leadership Academy.
This is a relatively new initiative, and we're so excited. In 2022, we had close to 500 participants, and we saw 150% increase within those students who had participated that believed they could have a large impact on real world issues. So just instilling that advocacy within the hearts of youth is a very important piece of the work that we do. And we love to say that a confident child is a protected child. We can give them statistics on exploitation and manipulation all day. But at the end of the day, if we've taught them where their value is coming from, who can determine their worth, then they're going to be much more likely to enter into those first relationships and stop those unhealthy habits from the very beginning and avoid potentially cases of exploitation. In association with that program, we do have Keeping Kids Safe in the Digital Age, which is a program for our parents. We deliver this both online and in person, and it does have an associated handbook that has example conversations. And this handbook and training program is the compilation of thousands of questions that we were getting from parents. If we were delivering a sex trafficking 101 training, these are all the questions that parents were asking us that we decided to answer and put in a book, have a director of research go through and implement statistics, and so that everything is evidence-based, and also have a survivor go through and include her personal story in association with the topics that are being discussed, whether that be healthy relationships, social media, things of that nature. And help kind of intertwine a real life story of exploitation as well.
Hey, Sherita, we have 8 minutes left, and we do want to make sure that they get to tell us about their events. We have another audience that listener that said was interested to know if there were any other businesses or organizations with visible signage for victims. And I believe QT has a sign out there that says "Safe Place." Do they still have those, Brooke or Shanita?
They do.
I just saw one the other day. I was at a QT and I saw the Safe Place, and it made me happy.
Yes, and the airport has done a wonderful job at sharing anti-trafficking messaging as well. So your rest stops, bus stops, gas stations, hotels are required to have the posting somewhere visible in their lobby. And more restaurants are including signage within their bathrooms. A lot of times they'll have a special drink that you can order at the bar, and that will mean that you need help. So they're coming up with more and more creative ways to make it more comfortable for the people reporting.
All right, go ahead, Sherita. We have about 7 minutes, and
I was just going to ask about your upcoming events, and then also did I hear you say earlier, bus drivers against sex trafficking?
Yes, so the big bus and truck drivers against sex trafficking. So the big 18-wheelers, we were actually part of training a truck drivers association, and also the beer wholesalers associations, that all of their distributing partners were being trained. So that I think really speaks to, no matter who you are, what your profession is, you have a role in this fight. It's just on you to reach out and see kind of where you fit in, because the cleaning service at a hotel is going to be able to see if they go in and see a lot of sex toys and child toys in the same room. A hotel management can see if pornography was charged to a room repeatedly where a child is staying. A cable guy is going to be able to come in and see a lot about a home. A person who is up on the line doing electrical work, they're going to see if 6 nice cars came to the same suburban home from 9 to 5 on a weekday. So everybody has their role in looking out for this. It's just a matter of figuring out where you can fit in. Our upcoming trainings, we do have an online training available this Thursday. It is a national human trafficking policy training. So it's going over the legislation and kind of the legislative work behind what we do, making systemic change. That's associated with our upcoming Advocacy Day in Georgia. That's February 21st down at the Capitol. And then we also have a Keeping Kids Safe in the Digital Age online training available, and that's on February 2nd. So all of these, we're constantly posting new trainings and new involvement opportunities at streetgrace.org/events. And of course, you have Shanita and I's contact information. If you'd like to schedule one of your own with like your business or school trained, we're more than happy to put together a training. The more specific we can be to the audience group, the happier we are, so that we can really cater to a training for nurses is going to be different than a training for city employees. So to cater to whatever group you'd like trained.
And also, I will add, if you guys want Youth Leadership Academy at your youth after school program, or in maybe like their health class, or just in their schools, and if you know people within the schools or in an organization that you would like to implement this, please reach out to Brooke or I, and we can definitely send more information and discuss how we can incorporate doing Youth Leadership Academy for your youth.
So Shanita, I have been to your corporate headquarters and done some training there on a couple of occasions. You earlier mentioned about parent prevention and things of this nature. Do you have any online training for parents that or anything like that?
Yes, so for parents, that would be Keeping Kids Safe in the Digital Age, which is February 2nd, Brooke. Yes, so February 2nd, that's one for the parents. And then also even the upcoming one on Thursday for the legislation in Georgia. Is it Georgia or is it?
The legislation training on Thursday is national. The advocacy day on February 22nd is Georgia specific.
Yeah.
So those are online trainings that they can go to your website and.
Will be in person at the Capitol.
No, I know that's in person at the Capitol, but the training on the 2nd or the parents training, that's online, correct?
Yes.
So Brooke, we have about 3 minutes. Could you give the website for our listeners and audience? And I'm sure they can go to the website and click some spots. Is that right, Shanita? Click some links that will get you to register for those trainings?
Yes.
Yes, it is streetgrace.org/events. That's where all of our trainings will be listed. If you're looking for materials to download and share with your friends and families, along with videos and online trainings readily available, that's streetgrace.org/resources.
Sherita, you have a couple of closing comments. We have about 2 minutes.
No, you ladies have answered all the questions that I had. I'm just honored to meet you, and it's wonderful that you're doing the work. And I probably have a couple of organizations that need to collaborate with you.
Well, thank you. We would love to.
Absolutely. And Brooke and Shanita, it's been a pleasure, as Sherita said, and an honor and a privilege to host you tonight, and for our listeners to get the education, to be informed, and to understand. And if you haven't, I encourage everyone listening to this today to go to thestreetgrace.org and look at their website, click the links to the events or to training, anything like that, because this is something that we as individuals have a moral obligation to educate ourselves, to inform ourselves, so we can help and be better servant leaders in our communities, whether we're in our community, whether we're traveling or just being recognized, because this isn't going away. We'd like to end it, but it's here and we need to deal with it. Right. So with that said, I just want to say thank you very, very much, Brooke and Shanita. Thank you, Sherita. I hope you don't get too much snow there and you stay nice and warm and cozy. And we look forward to seeing you in February, and we'll be getting in touch with you, Brooke, how Women in Community Impact can support you again in February for the lobby day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us. Y'all have a great night.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Bye-bye.